I wasn't even going to record this, to be honest, but I had a thought and I just couldn't move on from it. So I just felt like I should record myself talking about it, and maybe it'll be something that's worth uploading in a video. Maybe it won't be. But I've been thinking a lot about past generations and just like the different divides. I had a comment on one of my videos the other day, and it was from somebody who was Gen X. And they wrote like a long comment. It was basically like a book. It was very long. And I actually wrote a response. And my response was, funny enough, even longer. And then right before I was going to send the comment, I kind of like thought about it. And I was like, what am I even saying to this guy? You know, I agree with him on the first half of his comment, but then on the rest of it, where he talks about how the generation divide between us is it's like we can't do that, we can't divide each other, we got to come together, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's like that's the problem that I had with the comment, and that's what I was kind of responding to. Is that was like my whole thing, and then I just realized I was like, what am I even doing? If I send this to this guy, if he even reads all of this, right? If anyone even reads all of this, he's not going to get it. He's not going to understand. And I'm not saying he's stupid. That's not why. It's just because we're both coming at this exact issue from two completely different worldviews and philosophies and life experiences. And, that's something to be said. He does bring up how, like, even in my generation, we used to talk shit about the older generations. And it's like, well, yeah, I know. Like, you come from the generation where, technically before you with boomers, you guys had the summers of love and, the sexual revolution and Woodstock and all that. So you guys definitely didn't like your parents, obviously. Like, you don't have to fucking tell me that you guys didn't get along. Like, I understand and I get that. And so I agree with you on that. Like, obviously, every generation judges the past generation and has critiques and has divides and all these different things. Like, that's obvious. I'm not saying that that's not true. But the problem is him saying we need to come together. We need to stop bickering. The generations need to stop fighting and stop bickering, and we need to come together. And it's like, you know what? I actually agree with you on that. But the problem is that both of our generations, we have a set of issues that we both acknowledge and agree that are very serious. Something like the economy, or like the declining birth rate or immigration, stuff like that. Stuff that's like very obvious that, anybody who has a head on their shoulders and is paying attention to things would probably say, yeah, is an issue, is a problem. It's not even necessarily a left or right thing. There might be different answers to how to fix those things, but ultimately, everybody knows it's a problem. There's that quote from the Fallout TV show, which I can't believe I'm even quoting it, but it's that one quote where it says, everyone wants to save the world, but not everybody agrees on how to do it. It's actually a fire quote, which was crazy because that show's writing as a Fallout fan was not as good as it could have been. But that one scene I felt like actually was pretty good. That's a very good quote. And that applies to pretty much everything, especially with the generations. We have different opinions, and even with the different sides, like we have a set of problems that we all acknowledge. We might disagree on how to fix them, but we know they're issues. But then we also have a set of other problems that both sides don't acknowledge. For instance, older people, they see us, people in Gen Z, my generation, they see us as lazy. They see us as not caring about the future and about the country. And this is what I was kind of responding to this guy. And us, the younger generation, we're like, hey, we see Israel having as much influence as it does in our country. We see that as a pretty big problem. And older people see that too. There are a lot of older people who do, but for a very long time, that wasn't the case. And unfortunately, for even now, there's still a lot of people who are part of those generations who don't think it's bad. Like, where does the mass majority of support for Israel come from when you break it down on a generational scale? It comes from those older generations. In fact, the only part, I made a video talking about support between Palestine, Hamas, Israel, and I looked at actual statistics, and I broke it down in a video, and even with Gen Z, when it comes to the people that support Israel in Gen Z, it's just the people who are older. It's the people who are on my side of Gen Z, because I'm one of the older ones. I'm 27, so which is insane. I'm UNC status officially, but that's that. I can't believe I said that. But that's the thing is I'm still a part of Gen Z, and I'm in that weird transitional period where I'm at the first half of Gen Z, but I also have a lot of the same experiences as millennials, but also I get a lot of the problems Gen Z has because I was the first to experience a lot of those problems, like my part of Gen Z was. So even with that being said, it's like the only ones in my generation that support Israel when it comes to that are the older parts, So it's like, it is an age thing. It is a divide when it comes to generations. It just is. And simply saying something like, "Oh, it's just a house divided against itself will fall. It's just a tactic. It's engineered. Like we all have to come together." And it's like, yeah, I agree. That's actually very much needed for us to fix things completely. But how are we going to do that when the root cause for a lot of these issues? And I'm not going to just say they're just, Israel, but also Jewish oligarchs and influence with banks and the Federal Reserve and all these other things. There's so many layers to so many different things that are problems. And the older generations just simply do not acknowledge any of these things. They don't see them as problems. They see them as conspiracy theories. And as we're finding out more and more with pretty much each year, a lot of the times conspiracy theories turn out to be true. Like people will demonize you and cover up things and hide things, and they did that for generations, for decades. And then we find out, who was involved with JFK? Who was involved in 9/11? Who was involved in this? Why did we do this? Why did we invade Iraq? Why did we go here? Why did we do all these other things? And it's like, well, obviously the story everyone was sold at the beginning, the main narrative, just wasn't true. Now, not always the conspiracy ends up being right, but we're finding out more and more that it tends to be right. It's no longer a clock that's broken is right twice a day. That's not something you can say anymore. It's the clock is right 80 to 90% of the time. There is a 10%, where the conspiracy theory is just not true, and it's just bullshit, and it's insane, and it's crazy. Like, the Jews are not in your walls talking to you, right? That's not happening, okay? It's like, I get it. I understand. It's crazy, but it's like, the Jews didn't cause you to stub your toe, all right? It's like, I get it. Some stuff can be a little ridiculous, and I think we all get that. But older generations just don't acknowledge certain things, and it's kind of impossible for us to come together if we're constantly disagreeing on root causes for issues. And that's where it comes back to that quote. It's like, even when it comes to problems that we all agree are problems, we might even have different opinions on how to fix them, even with it just being on a generational level. Like a conservative that's 60 years old versus a conservative that's 20, they might have two completely different opinions on how to fix certain issues. And so it's very hard. And I get that's why debate and conversation and talking is so important. It's just kind of annoying, it's like you're not acknowledging certain issues and certain problems. And of course, they don't want to acknowledge the ones that we think are important. Like, well, if you don't want to talk about Israel, dating. Dating is a huge problem. And this video, I'm not really going to cover it here, but I'll make a video talking about it. Like dating on a level of like the birth rates and marriage and like families and family structure. I don't think anybody really acknowledges this, and this is why I have to make a video just talking about this exact thing. But dating as a whole, dude, relationships as a whole between sexes, between men and women for the newer generations is so fractured and fucked. It's very bad. And we could fix literally every issue when it comes to the economy, when it comes to influence from foreign nations or, fifth column people in our government, all these different things. We could get rid of all of that. But if we don't fix dating and like marriage, there's literally no point because our country will just fall apart. Like we will not have a proper birth rate to replace the older generations. and will literally just fade away. And that's why one of the answers when it comes to leftists and liberals and all these different people to fix that is to import immigrants, because they're like, well, we're not having enough kids. Let's bring people over from other countries. And really, it's like that for a few reasons, because all these corporations and companies, they like the idea of bringing over foreigners because they can pay them less, So it's like they use that and that's kind of like the goal is like the less Americans you can hire at your American company, the less you have to spend on labor. And, they don't really care if the future of the country is white or Christian or whatever, or American for that matter, as long as they, have cheap labor that they can exploit, which is an actual problem. That is a real thing. And it's an issue with older conservatives where they don't acknowledge that, because to acknowledge that is to talk shit about certain corporations and companies. And some people just have like a hard-on for not doing that. And it's just like, dude, you're not doing anybody any favors. And relationships between men and women when it comes to Gen Z Americans is just bad. We're not getting married. We're not having kids. And it's getting to insane extreme levels. And there's a few different subjects kind of surrounding that I want to talk about. Not in this video, of course, but they're honestly like sad. And it's an actual big issue. And like I said, we could fix everything, but if we don't fix that, it doesn't matter. But even talking about that, even like bringing something like that up, older generations, their solutions for those things just don't work. It's like, I hate to break it to you, but like your dating advice just doesn't work. Like your dating advice is going to end up getting your grandson left on red. Like he's not going to get the second date. The girl's going to use him for dinner, and that's pretty much it. Like it's not going to lead to anything fruitful, unfortunately. I know you think you were a class act back in the 60s with women, but nowadays you would get eaten alive, okay? And that's not me trying to be mean or vindictive. That's just the way things are. And a lot of these people just don't acknowledge certain issues like that. But moving on from dating, it's like, where does this all lead, with the divide when it comes to generational disagreements? And it's like, well, it's going to lead, and this is one of the things I said in the comment that I was going to respond with to that older gentleman, but I ended up not sending it because I was like, he's not going to read this and understand it. So, but this is one of the things I said. I said, well, this is going to lead to a generation, either our generation, which is Gen Z, or Gen Alpha, which Gen Alpha, they're getting nothing from all of this. We're barely getting anything, dude. We're getting bullshit. Gen Alpha is getting even more bullshit. That is all they're getting, which is insane. And that's not going to lead to people being content and wanting to just have a normal life, going to college, getting a job, and, being a goody little two-shoes and paying their taxes. That's going to lead to people actually wanting to set shit on fire. And I'm not saying they should do that. I'm not here to advocate for anything like that. But I'm just saying it's like, what do you expect to happen? There's another video I watched earlier with this older guy. I think his YouTube channel is called Dad Saves America, and he was talking about Nick Fuentes, and he was talking about how, my son and many other Gen Z boys and men, they're turning to voices like Nick Fuentes and like this and like that, and they're listening to all these people that we would have never listened to and we would have never agreed with, and I don't agree with Nick Fuentes on a lot of stuff, but he makes some good points here and there. And it's like, why do they do this? And it's like, well, guys, it's because of all this woke stuff, and it's because of all that. And I was watching the video, and I was just like halfway through it, I was like, man, this guy kind of just doesn't, I don't think he grasps what's actually going on. I don't think these people really get it. I don't think they understand. It's like the way things have been going, the way things are not going to continue. Regardless of whoever's in charge, of whatever the main narrative is, of whoever's the voice of the right or the left, all that is unimportant, to be honest. It's like a change is coming. Like, there's going to be a radical change in this country. There's going to be a radical change in the West as a whole. There is no changing that. Nobody can prevent that. The way the world has been, the way America has been for the past few decades, it will not continue. It just cannot. It literally cannot survive. We don't even have money. You know what's one of the biggest expenses we pay when it comes to our debt each year? It's not even paying off the debt, it's paying off the interest to the debt, because we are in so much deep shit when it comes to debt that we can't even afford to pay it. We can barely afford the minimum payment, which just covers the interest each year. That's how bad it is. That means there's no money. Like, do you not get that? That means you're broke. We are broke. And it's not getting better. There's nothing we've done that have, even in this term, even with Trump 2.0, there's nothing that has happened in the past 10 months that is kind of changing that course. Because ultimately, it's like this isn't something you can fix in 4 years. Like, this is something that has been coming to us for over a decade, for, you could say over 2 decades, with the way we started spending money and the way things have been going with the economy and with just credit and all these different avenues, and with us printing things. And it's like there's nothing you can do to kind of stop it. It's going to get more and more intense. That's just how it's going to be. That's just something we all have to acknowledge. But a part of that is like, there's a lot of things that are like that. There isn't going to be some bill you can pass that's going to fix it within 6 months. There isn't going to be some politician that can give a speech that's going to change people's minds, in one night. There isn't going to be a book that comes out that's going to radically change people in 30 seconds. This is something that's going to, for us to fix, it's going to take a long time. And I've said that before, but the reason why I stress that so much is because I don't think the older generation understands where this is leading for the younger generations. And for like a guy who is like Dad Saves America, that YouTuber I was talking about, they don't grasp the fact that the reason why your son is watching Nick Fuentes and the reason why the younger generations are kind of turning more and more far right. And it's not just that, too. There are also younger guys who are becoming more and more far left. It's because the center of politics, where a lot of these people kind of like hover around, a lot of the older generations and millennials, they kind of hover around the centrist mentality, the room temp politics, the lukewarm, ideologies. Like, those things have unfortunately led to this country, to the situations we're in. They're not getting better, and none of the answers that your version of politics provides is going to fix any of those things. So people are going to become more radically right and more radically left. There's nothing you can do to stop that. And that includes your son. I know you don't want to hear that, and I know you don't like hearing that, but that's just the case. And what I was saying is, like, where does this lead, and where does the older generation not understand it's going to lead to? It's going to lead to an extremism on some spectrum, on some level. And it already has. And we've seen that with what happened with Charlie and the reaction to it. I feel like everybody's talked about Charlie dying so much, myself included, but the biggest gripe we have with it, besides an innocent man being killed in front of the entire world, which he just executed horrible, it's like horrible. But the reaction to it is what kind of solidified that as like a huge moment. It's like people celebrating it. They took something that was very tragic and horrible and they turned it into like an historical event. They put it on a level that would have never been if they hadn't done that. They poured salt into the wound, essentially, and it radicalized a lot of people, and it kind of woke up a lot of people to where there are different sides to this. And yeah, there are influences and people who are just kind of, they play this game because it's the game they've always played, playing both sides to their advantage, divide and conquer. That is something that is true, not just from left and right, men and women, but also, young people, old people. That is something that has always been the case. Unfortunately, it will always be the case. But it's like, there's no way you room temp fix this. It's like, this is going to lead to something that is more extreme. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It can be an extreme thing in a good way. I would argue and say that there are beliefs and philosophies and ideologies that are just better than others. And if a younger generation is going to heavily lean into that way of thinking, and if they believe that's the only way they can fix things, that's what they're going to do. So like I've said multiple times, when people use labels like racism or Nazi or neo whatever or anti-Semite or any of these things, they don't matter to a lot of the younger people anymore because they see that for what it is. It's like you're just trying to shut people up who disagree with you. And ultimately, that doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. We don't care. The only people who care about those labels are older people. I hate to say it, but it's like that's just how it is. So it's like, yeah, it would be great if all of us could come together. Black, white, left, right, old, young, all these things. Like, yeah, that would be very beautiful. And I think ultimately that is a goal for anybody, really, to have peace and to actually have a society that puts forth the values that made this country what it is, that made it as great as it could be, to actually put those first and to put the people of this country first and to do it in a way that is peaceful. I think that's ultimately everyone's goal. That's at least my goal. I would love that. But we're not always going to get along and we're not always going to come together. And it's kind of hard for us to do that if a lot of people don't even acknowledge issues that are root causes to a lot of these things. So it's me rambling. I'm always rambling. You guys know, you guys understand. I don't even know if I'm going to make this into a video, but I just felt like this was something that I couldn't stop thinking about and where this leads to and how the older generations don't understand. This is going to lead to an extreme reaction, even more extreme than what we've seen so far. Now, that doesn't mean violence. I know a lot of people think it does. It doesn't necessarily mean violence. More than likely, it will be violence. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for that, but I'm saying there are people who are doing that. There are people who do want more blood, who do want more violence. I don't like those people. I don't agree with them. But we have to acknowledge that it is going in a certain direction. That things are escalating, and they will continue to escalate. And the younger generations aren't going to become more moderate. So it's like this guy, Dad Saves America, talking about how I don't understand. How my son is, it's like if you have a son, chances are he's probably watching Nick Fuentes. It's like, well, no shit. You think they're going to watch people like you? It's like, no offense, dude, but it's like when it comes to a lot of the issues we have with stuff going on in the world and in this country, we'll acknowledge all the same problems, but then when it comes to something like Israel or Jewish influence or, any of these different things, you guys will just bury your heads in the sand like you're a fucking ostrich and, tug your tail in between your legs. It's like, it's pathetic. So yeah, your son and a lot of the younger people aren't going to look up to you guys, and they're not going to watch you because they look at you and they agree with you on most things. And then when it comes to the actual problems that matter to us, you guys don't even talk about them. You don't even acknowledge them as problems. You call us crazy, and then you do what left-leaning people do. You do what the woke left people do. You throw labels on us. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to respect you or want to listen to you if you do that. Because, your generations are the ones that led us here. And I'm not saying it's you specifically. I know a lot of people were tricked into things becoming the way they were. Politicians have always lied, so I'm not saying it's 100% y'all's fault. But also at the same time, it's like, let's call a spade here. Your generation is the one that took America at its peak and brought it to where it is now. And not just yours, the generation after yours, and then the generation before. So it's like, I get it, but let's be real here. So it's like you demonizing us or making fun of us when it comes to these problems. It's like, yeah, we're not going to respect you. We're not going to look up to you. We'll agree with you, but then when it comes to the real meat and potatoes, we're not going to see eye to eye. So to the comment that person left, and to all these people freaking out about their sons watching Nick Fuentes or even watching a channel like me maybe or any of these other things, it's like, well, what do you expect? You think things were just going to return to everybody watching Fox News? Oh, well, Fox News is on. It's a 7 p.m. special. 7 p.m. special. They're going to be talking about the real news on Fox. Oh, man, The Blaze, Glenn Beck, they have a new special on tonight. Glenn Beck, he only puts out something if he knows it's true. Speaking about Glenn Beck, do you guys see that video where he's absolutely just getting destroyed I can't believe I even used those words. It sound like a fucking YouTube title generator. Liberal gets owned. I just get, but no, like there's a video where he's like taking questions and answers, and the two kids are asking him about like the USS Liberty and Israel's influence, and Glenn Beck was like getting annoyed and getting like obviously uncomfortable, and then he tried to be like, I am America first, and it's like, dude, didn't you just say like, not on your show not that long ago that like the whole reason you do all this is because of like it, like you love Jews or you love Israel or some shit? It's like, yeah, these people, they need to be uncomfortable because we're not letting up, and people have to understand. It's like, yeah, the younger generations, they're not going to be the style of conservative you're used to. The style of conservative that you are is going to become a minority in the future generations. And not because people are going to become more centered and more moderate, because they're going to become more radical on both ends. And that includes conservatism, and that includes people are going to become more far right. That's just fucking duh. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that. But a lot of these older people, they don't want to acknowledge that, because for them to do so, that's going to be them having to acknowledge a lot of things. And it's a lot of things that they don't want to talk about, because that might actually influence their pocket money, if you get what I'm saying. Their pocket change might get a little light. Pockets might not be as deep as they usually are if they talk about those problems. So, yeah, they're not going to. I think they will eventually. I think they'll have to slowly start adopting those talking points, especially when boomers start dying, because that's it. We're getting to that point to where that generation in the next 10 to 20 years is probably mostly not going to be around anymore. That's just because they're all old. That's just what's going to happen. A lot of them aren't healthy, and the ones that are, they'll be here with us. Great, cool. But a lot of them are going to start dying, and all of these conservatives, they're going to have to start adopting more radical talking points. Liberals are already doing it. I don't know if you've noticed. That's why a lot of them are progressives and doing insane shit. And I'll be honest, yeah, they're fucking nuts. It's like they have to get them on their side. And I don't know when the more established conservatives are going to do that, but they're going to. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they should, and I don't really care if they do, but they will be doing it. You'll see it. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but in your lifetime, you will start to see that change happening. And I don't think they really understand where this could lead. This could get very crazy, and not in a horrible way, but if it did get very radical, if it did get very extreme, and if the younger generation fully believed that this is what was needed to save the country, what would the older generation do? Are they going to get in the way of that? Or are they going to help? I think that might actually be something that comes up in our lifetime. I'm not saying I look forward to that. I'm not saying that's something that's good or bad. I'm just being honest with you and just making a basic prediction. It's like, I think that's where things are leading. So there is a lot of divide. It would be great if we could all come together, but ultimately it's kind of hard to do that when you don't even acknowledge the root cause to a lot of these issues. It's like, how are we supposed to fix these things if you won't acknowledge that? You can't fix a fucked up tooth by just brushing it. You have to clean the cavity or do a root canal. You have to go at the source. You have to get the root cause of what's causing the pain, the issue, and you have to have a solution for that. I'm not saying the solution should be this or that, but I'm saying there are problems, they need solutions, and if we don't figure that out, we're not going to have a country. So yeah, I'm not trying to be all crazy, be all weird. I've been rambling. I've been saying the same thing over and over. I get it. You guys are like, Tom, what's going on? The quality of your content has been plummeting, dude. I'm unsubscribing. I'm not saying all that. I'm just saying it's like, this might not even be a video. I could not stop thinking about this, and I had to talk about it. So I was like, I got to record this. So this might be a video. If it is, please let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think. Add on to any of the things I'm saying. Challenge me on what I'm saying. I actually like it when that happens. Sometimes you guys say some crazy shit. I'm not even gonna lie. Especially about Nick. You guys have been saying crazy shit about Nick. And I'm not going to get into all that. It's whatever. I don't care. It's kind of funny sometimes, but I love it when you guys talk to me and when we have a conversation about these things, because these things do matter, and you don't have to be Gen Z to do that. I get a lot of older people, millennials, Gen Xers, boomers. Some of you watch this channel, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that different people watch it, and I do like it when you leave comments. So let me know what you think about this. And if I'm wrong on all this, if we're all just going to go back to being buddies and we're all going to become moderate, conservative Christians, and well, it's like I don't really like rap and go to church on Sunday. And, the church on Sunday is pretty based. I'm not going to lie. That would be great if most churches weren't absolute heretical dog trash like they are now in America, unfortunately. But yeah, it's like I don't think we're going to go back to that traditionalist conservative style. I think that's going to die out, obviously, or at least not completely return to it. But what do you think? Do you disagree? If you do, let me know how. Let me know how I'm wrong. But in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. I know I was rambling on. I'll have some more structured stuff coming forward, hopefully this week too, but you know how it is. This is just me speaking my mind on these things, and I'm just trying to inspire conversation and people to talk about those things as well. But thank you all so much. If you did enjoy, like, comment, subscribe to the channel for more American First content. I am a Christian, Gen Z man, American First, obviously, and if you have any of those same beliefs, please make yourself at home, subscribe, and follow me on Rumble. And in the meantime, guys, thank you so much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all later.